Okay, as this screen says, this presentation is being recorded, and I hope it's going to be edited some.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to thank Mike Walker for helping me with this and setting it up. And this is his second one today, so I know he's worn out. Um,
Well, actually, I'm happy to do it. So thanks for letting me do it for you. I wish I could make it a little easier, but that's what Zoom does to some people and sometimes. So I've done it a lot, so I'm getting used to it. You,
well, I appreciate that. This is my first presentation other than the training thing we did last Saturday, which had no problems at all for me after I got on. And this one's been the opposite. Um, I'm hoping to go through this presentation at a pretty steady pace. There are going to be some areas which I might concentrate on a little bit. Uh, and I have no idea what the general level of knowledge is for every treasurer coming in here. So I'm going to have some that are pretty basic and some that might be a little bit more advanced things. And um, we'll just go through it and see how it works out. Um, I guess this is pretty obvious. If you can't balance a checking account, you're going to have to learn. Double entry accounting is helpful, but it's not necessary. I know people who have been treasurer without knowing anything about it, and I'm not going to discuss credits and debits and liabilities and assets or any of that kind of stuff today. Um, Different people use different systems. When I was treasurer the first time 40 years ago, I had a piece of ledger paper and a pencil, and I didn't even have a calculator. I had a crank adding machine. And then Microsoft Excel and Open Architecture ledger programs came on. And then other programs like Quicken and QuickBooks, which I would put at the top of the food chain for accounting programs. Now, I use Microsoft Excel today. I personally use Quicken for my personal accounts, and I have used QuickBooks. So I can talk to pretty much anybody about any one of these things, but probably better offline. Later on, I'm going to show some examples of how Farragut Lions Club keeps its books. And that will be in Microsoft Excel. Have a calendar rundown. Clubs are on a fiscal. If you're filing a federal tax return, that means that your due date is November 15th. Here's an example. End of the month. Oh, that's nice. My internet connection is now unstable. At the end of the month, this month, tax year 2019 ends, and your federal tax return is due November 15th, 2020. So that might seem a little odd to some people that here I'm halfway through 2020 and tax year 2019 is just ending, but that's the way the world works. All right, first we're going to talk about managing your administrative and your activity bank accounts. Hopefully everybody realizes that you have to have two checking accounts, one for your administrative operations, one for your activity operations. I'm going to start by discussing the administrative activity bank account first, and then go on to the activity bank account. The administrative bank account contains funds that you get from the club members, from such things as dues. Maybe they pay you for some club supplies you've ordered. It could be that you're running a special celebration, a charter night, 50th anniversary, and you've got every member is going to pay $10 to come to that. And that would be that $10 would go in the administrative account, and you would pay the cost of that out of the administrative account. So you've got your deposits, which are mostly usually a member's dues, might be entrance fees. I don't know if there's any clubs on this call who still take in money for members' meals and pay the meals for all the members who attend the meetings. Maybe there are, maybe there's not. You might have guests come in. And you might want funds to pay for the guest meals. Also, my wife viewed this and she said not to forget the tail twister account that some clubs get money their tail twister collects. And my club has a little administrative raffle that we do at every meeting, just inside the meeting, and we use that money to pay for guest meals. You disperse funds on behalf of the membership, and most of that is due money, LCI and the district and state. Again, if the club pays for the meals for all the members, that would come out of this fund. The treasurer would also help to set the dues levels. And we'll talk about that here in a little while. And Mike's big on having finance committee and an administrative budget. Some clubs, particularly the smaller clubs, don't bother with the budget. If you've only got 10 members, and pretty much everybody can be on the finance committee. That's, clubs have different ways of doing that. Sometimes the treasurer just sets the budget and hands it to the club, and then they don't disagree with it. That's what it is. Member dues. Your members pay, you have to set them high enough to cover the following: Lions Club's international dues, state and district dues, and you have to, whatever additional funds you need for operating, such as meals, supplies, guest meals, etc. You have to have enough money that you're getting in from your membership to cover that. LCI dues. Currently, every club pays LCI $43 a year, semi-annually. And hopefully your club is getting all the credits available to it from LCI for dues. Specifically, there's the credit for the members in the same family. Now, the same family means there has to be some kind of relationship between the members. They have to be living at the same address, and they have to be members of the same club. One member pays the full amount, the subsequent members pay 1/2 dues. The example I'm using is the most typical one. The husband and wife members in the same club, they pay $64.50 a piece. That's $43 plus 1/2, which is $21.50. Quick example of other kinds of things. You could have a father and son who happen to live together for whatever reason. They could be considered a same family living together if they're at the same address and they're at the same club. However, I will give you the example of myself and my wife. We're in the same family. We live at the same address. We are not members of the same club. So both of us have to pay full dues to Lions International. We just pay them through different clubs. I also have a mother and a daughter combination in my home club, the Farragut Club. So they're same family, members of the same club, but they don't live at the same address. So they don't get the credit from Lions Clubs International. If you happen to have any full-time students under the age of 30 in your club, Lions International really loves them because they don't pay any dues. That means that Knoxville Lions, who are pretty much all students, basically don't have any LCI dues. Currently, LCI drops an email to the treasurers on record monthly, reminding them to check my LCI for invoices. I hope all the treasurers on this call are getting that. I know I get it. I don't know exactly what day they drop it on, but I get it. And there's a good discussion in the treasurer's ebook about accessing my LCI and getting that to that invoice and how you can actually pay the bill electronically. And I refer you to the treasurer's ebook for that. It's like 3 or 4 pages long. So it's a very, very detailed discussion about that. LCI bills clubs on the membership counts at the end of the fiscal year and halfway through the fiscal year. So that would be June 30th and December 31st. So you would pay $21.50 or half the dues on June 30th, and on December 31st, you pay the other half the dues. The dues are based on the membership level on those dates, and it's like a snapshot. So right on June 30th, they take a snapshot of your club's membership. How many members are there? That's what you pay the dues on. If you drop 5 members the next day on July 1st, sorry about that. They took the snapshot on June 30th. So you're going to get a bill that you might think is a little bit higher than it should be, but your secretary's got to drop the members before July 1st. Additionally, LCI prorates dues for partial periods inside the semi-annual window. So if you get a new member, say on October 30th, LCI is going to drop you a bill for 2 months, and then they'll start dropping you a bill for the full amount. If you want to check that interim bill and see if it's right, again, the treasurer's ebook has a hyperlink that can take you right to the calculation of the prorated dues, and you can check Lions International. Finally, Lions Clubs International collects a $35 administrative fee on every new member. Now, it's my understanding that on July 1st, there's going to be a waiver of that $35 administration fee. I have no idea how long that waiver is going to last. Apparently that wasn't decided, but my current information is there will be a waiver on the $35 administration fee. The biggest thing that your members have to pay dues on is the state and district dues. They're currently $20.60. And again, they're payable semi-annually. Neither the state nor the district allows any credit to members of the same family living at the same address who are members of the same club. However, our district does give you a credit for full-time students under the age of 30. So they only pay $12.60. State and district dues are calculated by the district treasurer on club memberships in the same days that the international uses, June 30th and December 31st. He's been rendering the bills via email in about July or January. There is no proration of the dues, nor is there any initiation fee. That means if you add new members in August, you're not going to get a bill on them till the December billing, which will be the full amount for half a year. So, hey, that's a deal.
Dave, may I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Paulette reminded me in the chat box that the $35 dues waiver for new members runs through December, 6 months through December 31st. Okay.
That's good information. So everybody needs to run right out and sign up new members and save $35 on each one of them. That's a selling point.
And probably don't want to put them on your books until July the 1st.
Yeah, no offense to the current district governor, a very nice lady, but we're not going to have a good year membership-wise. So there's no point really worrying about that. It's just not going to happen this year due to a variety of reasons out of her control.
Yeah, the reason I'd say that is to avoid paying some dues this year, at the end of June.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Before I do this, I have something to say about when you render notices to your membership. Hopefully, all the clubs have already sent dues notices to their members and started collecting membership dues for next year or next half year or next quarter or however your club does its dues. The reason I say that is June 30th is coming. And you really need to know if you have any members who are not going to renew their membership and pay their dues, so you don't get hit with a bill for them and then you don't get any money for them. So just a heads up, I hope you've been sending, Treasurer's been on the ball and sending out notices. Or I might add the secretary. Some clubs may use the secretary to do the dues billing. My club does not. And I know that Lions Clubs International, a lot of their paperwork, or at least the older paperwork, says the secretary bills the dues. I'm not sure that's truly correct in most clubs, but somebody should have gotten those notices out, or you could get stuck with some money. All right, so let's talk about the federal tax ID. Businesses, so as such, they're required to have federal tax IDs. And just assuming that we don't have any brand new clubs on this call. So when they open they already have their federal tax ID for their administrative account because they've got a bank account. And so they had to have it. Clubs are, as of, I don't know, it happened about 2008 when they first started doing this, but clubs are required to link their administrative account EIN with the IRS through LCI's 501c4 federal tax exemption. And accordingly, since then that club is linked into the IRS to not be charged any tax money, each club is required then to make an annual IRS filing. Almost every club, Jim's in the waiting room. I don't know if I want to let him in. Almost every club is required to make the Form 990 filing. And since I don't know of any clubs who have dues and stuff greater than $50,000, they'd be filing the simplified 990N form. It's usually just called the postcard filing. You do it online. It's real basic information. You can pop it right in about 5 minutes. But like I say, every club should already be doing this. And I'm sure we'll get some questions about this later, but we'll go on right now. Hopefully you can actually see this. I scanned in the actual filing for the Farragut Lions Club for the tax year 2018, which was the last tax year, ended June of 30th of 2019. And although this may look a little unusual to some people based on theirs, since the Farragut years, the way you did it was different than it is today. So the clubs that started out right off the bat, they're all known as the International Association of Lions Clubs, doing business as whatever club it is. I'm not about to try to change that. Nowadays, it says the organizational name is the name of the club, doing business as International Association of Lions Clubs. I'm not going to attempt to change that. It's just too difficult to deal with them. One more time, important warning here. If you don't take anything out of this talk at all, take this home. If you go home and you find that your club has not filed an IRS Form 990 on your administrative operations in the last 3 years, number one, you are in violation of the federal law. Number two, you're subject to losing your income tax-free status. And number three, you're potentially subject to fine, and that's a fact. And there are clubs in this district who have had a run-in with this. So if you say that there's been no filing in the last 3 years, you can contact myself. My contact information will be the last slide on this. You can contact the district treasurer, Chuck Bailey, or you can contact the past district treasurer, or 2 district treasurers ago, Jim McFarland, and say, I got a problem. And we'll be glad to talk to you and see what we can do to get your problem handled. But this is, if you don't take anything home with you, You take this home. This can be bad. All right, Mike, do we have any questions of a general nature?
There's nothing in the chat box right now.
Okay. The way I'm going to handle questions is if you put one in the chat box and if Mike determines that it's club specific, he's going to probably reply back to you. I'm going to take your name and phone number and give it to Dave, and he'll get back in touch with you. And I will get back in touch with you this afternoon or tomorrow. If it's general for the whole group, then we'll bring it up in the questions section. I hope that's all right with everybody.
Sounds good to me.
So let's move on over to the other side of the coin, the activity account. And this should be a separate bank account from the administrative account. I will say this, I'm using the term activity account because that's what the Lions Club ebook calls it. My club calls it the charity account. Your club might call it the benevolence account, but we all know what it is. It's the funds that you collect from the public and that disperse back for the public benefit. The treasurer's functions for the activities account are you deposit funds from the general public, such as direct donations or funds that you raise at special public events. And you disperse the funds for grants to people to do, whatever, buy glasses for people or things like that. And if you're running a special event, you've got cost of fundraising funds. That cost of the fundraising comes out of the activity account. And any area that is a public benefit as directed by your club. Now, I will say right here, if your club happens to direct you to disperse some monies from the activities account for something that's, I don't know, like a 50th anniversary for your club or something like that, then you ought to pump your foot down because that's not a valid thing to be doing. The treasurer also needs to manage the tax liabilities or get with somebody who knows enough about potential tax liabilities and that can help them, because tax liabilities are a big deal, and we honestly, none of us can know everything there is to know about what's out there. And again, we have the activities budget. And again, this is very club specific. Smaller clubs usually don't bother with it. Larger clubs have, whatever technique they have of producing a budget. So here's the situation. In this district, there are two types of clubs, and it's almost 50-50 right down the middle. And there was no term or nomenclature to describe these two different types of clubs. So I invented two new terms. You won't find them anyplace else except on this presentation. And the first term is a single level club. And what that primarily means is you do not have a separate charitable entity. You have not formed a separate corporation and filed with the IRS to establish a 501c3 nonprofit to handle your charitable operations. You just handle them right out of your basic club. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way we all did business for years. Your activity bank account really should have the same EIN as your administrative bank account, because you're going to be filing your tax return basically the same time you file your administrative bank account return under the Lions Club International 501c4 designation. And the 990N you file should cover both of them. Assuming, one caveat, assuming that between the two of them, you don't raise over $50,000 a year. And I wish we had a club that raised over $50,000. I wish my club did, but doesn't happen. And the clubs that are in this particular bracket, you cannot give a charitable tax letter to any donor because that is at the province of the 501c3 filing designation, and you don't have that filing designation. It's my opinion that single level clubs who raise money from the public need to comply with the State of Tennessee Solicitation Act requirements. Honestly, I am not an expert on them. I just know they exist. However, if you want to know about that, you pop the chat box for Mike, and he'll get me the club, whatever club you are, and I will get you information on the state of Tennessee Solicitation Act requirements, or I will put you in touch with another lion who knows much more about that than I do. I don't want to mislead you on something I might say. Okay, then we have what I call the two-level clubs, or dual-level club, and they're the other half of the clubs. And they have spent some money, made a corporation filing. They're incorporated. They incorporated a 501c3 entity. They filed with the IRS, or they file aggregated federal taxes under a single umbrella, because we have a thing called Smoky Mountain Lions Charities, which is 15 clubs who aggregate their activity accounts together for tax purposes. These clubs can provide tax letters. They have to provide tax letters to donors. These clubs' charitable operating entity must file a separate IRS 990 tax form, and they absolutely must make the state charity tax filing. Remember, they went to the trouble of incorporating themselves in the state of Tennessee, so they're real easy for the state to find. Smoky Mountain Lions Charities files all the required forms for this in aggregate for all of its members. Side note, earlier I said that all clubs have to file a 990N on their administrative account. Smoky Mountain Lions Charities does not file the 990N on its members. They require the members themselves to file that. So if you're in Smoky Mountain Lions Charities, I don't want you to get confused by that. We file on everything else. We don't file on that. That's your responsibility. Questions? I can't be doing this well. There must be so many that Mike can't keep up with them.
Dave, I was just about to ask. I think I've got everybody covered that's in the chat box. There's really not been that much.
Okay.
Hang on.
Well, hopefully a lot of people have run into all this stuff before. Certainly if they've had my treasurer's training, they've seen it all.
Okay, I just had one pop up. It says 990N is, this is from Suzanne, 990N is for administrative only, correct?
No, if you are a level 1 single level club, it covers your 990N, but cover both of your operations if you've been smart enough to have the same EIN for both your accounts. If you're a level 2 club, and let's say you're a level 2 club, you're not in Smoky Mountain Lions Charities, you have your own separate organization, then you could file a 990N as long as you make as long as your charity operation made less than $50,000. It's only when you get over $50,000 that you have to start worrying about the 990EZ and the full 990 form. And as I kind of mentioned in the past, I'm not sure we have any clubs that the club alone is over $50,000 in gross receipts in a year. Now, Smoky Mountain Lions Charities is, but that's 15 clubs together. Hopefully that answered her question.
Okay, can I ask people who are making questions to make them in the public chat, not to the private chat? I'm getting these to me, and everybody else is not seeing them. But there aren't any more. I think you're good.
Okay. Well, if Suzanne wants additional talking about it, she can reply back in chat, and you can give me her name, and I'll call her.
Okay.
No problem. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you, I am anal about documentation. I have spent 45 years in telephone business, and what the hell? Cut that off. Bye. I have spent 45 years in the telephone business, most of it in regulatory. And when you're in regulatory, you everything is documented, everything. So if you think I'm overboard, fine, but that's the way it is. Fund disbursement. The disbursement of funds is only funds that are included in a club-approved budget or have been approved at a regular club meeting or have been approved by the board of directors. Get invoices, emails, whatever you get telling you the treasurer to pay that bill, you need that documentation. And remember, club and board minutes are financial documents. True story. Long ago, 35 years ago, when I was a treasurer of just a few years, I was in a club in Virginia, and my club had decided that the local high school football team was having a really good year, so we were going to buy some caps and sell them that said, I forget what it said, but it promoted the team in a positive light. And the club had a meeting and they voted to buy 100 caps at a certain price and sell them at a certain price. And the member who was promoting this or taking care of it went out and proceeded to decide that no, we needed 200 caps at that price and bought 200 caps. And of course, it was a rural area and we couldn't sell them. So the invoice comes in and it's for 200 caps. And I'm the treasurer and I'm looking at that and I'm looking at the minutes and I'm going, wait a minute. Why do we have a bill here for 200 caps? We were only supposed to order 100 caps. So it went back to the board of directors and the board, and I paid for 100 caps. And the board told me back that you did the right thing. We did not authorize buying of 200 caps, and and the minutes were right there, accurate, black and white. Plus the fact that they all remembered it. So unfortunately, that member was not a happy member. But he brought it on himself. If you follow me, he shouldn't have bought 200 caps. And that's an absolutely true story. Documentation of fund receipts. Since you make a list by deposit, by account, of who gave what, include the name, the check number or cash, and what the money was for. I'm going to give you an example of what Farragut does a little later on, a snapshot of it. We attach the bank deposit receipt to it. If you're incorporated 501c3 two-level club, remember to get the address information as you may need to send a tax contribution letter. Usually the address information, if nothing else comes with it but just a check, what's on the check. You've got a method of labeling your receipts and disbursements, and you should be able to track them through both your checkbook and your record recording system. I'm going to show examples of that. I scan all my records. Eventually, I'm going to get rid of the financial documents, the paper, and I will have scans that are just on servers, and they last forever. To all the Smoky Mountain Lions Club, Lions Charities Clubs on this call, you're required to scan your charity documents and send them to the corporate treasurer annually. So if we get an audit and you live your life like you're going to have an audit, he doesn't have to go chase down every club to get their records. Normal record keeping is 7 years. Bonding and signatures. I view this as a club preference. Some clubs absolutely want to bond the treasurer. Other clubs could care less about it. Some clubs demand to have 2 signatures on every check. Other clubs could care less about that. I will say that changing, when you're talking about signatures on checks, changing signatory parties requires requirements. They depend on the bank. And I'd say usually require club minutes authorizing who they're going to be. I will say it will definitely require club minutes to tell the bank who the signature parties are. because they want those club minutes to justify the change. Club reporting, and to me, this is reporting back to your club's membership. And it's an individual club preference. I would suggest that or want to know the balances in the checking accounts and maybe any expected expenses yet to be paid, so they have an idea about how much money you've got. And if your club members are like my club members, 5 minutes after your fundraising activity ends, they want to know how you did on it. And of course, 5 minutes after it, you don't know. But they want to know really quickly, hey, we had a car show, how much money did we make, or something like that. Questions?
Not seeing anything, Dave.
Is everybody still on?
Yeah, it looks like it.
They must know more about this stuff than me. Okay, here's a venture into the Farragut Lions Club administrative account. And this is how I keep records. I just use a straight over Excel workbook with 3 worksheets. One of them for income, one of them for disbursements, and one of them to bring it all together. And here's the snapshot. I think I did it as of April 30th. My club has not met since March 11th. So there really wasn't any activity the last 2 months. I would call your attention to the deposit of 9/4/2019. It's called deposit number 2. And we're going to take a look at my record of that deposit right now. And every one of my deposits has a cover sheet on it. It might have additional information, maybe the remittance form or something like that attached to it. But every one of them's got a cover sheet, and it goes by what the money was received for. In this case, Jack Miller finally paid his dues. Jack's always late. And with check number 7702, we had an administrative raffle at that meeting. We must have had a really large turnout at that meeting, because $33 is pretty good administrative raffle. And the Lions 12-inch charities sent out their $1 per raffle ticket sold for the district, check 1008, and I happened to put that in the administrative account. Because my view of it, it didn't come from the public, it came from Lions Club's 12-inch charities. More than likely, that money is going to be moved later, and we'll probably do something charitable with it, like give it back to 12-inch charities, but that hasn't happened yet. And there's a deposit ticket that goes with it. And then I have another worksheet that's got disbursements. And folks, this is pretty easy to set up. And you got a date, the payee, the check number, and then columns about different things that it could be for. Specifically, I want to look at the check on January 29th, 2020 to the Knoxville Lions Club, number 1113 for $200. And here it is. Here's my disbursement of that. And so I actually got my envelope together, and I put the little top part of that in the envelope saying, here's your money. We gave him a check for $200. And the key thing about that is this disbursement was approved at the January 28th, 2020 regular Lions meeting. If you go back to the minutes, it's right in there. Motion, seconded, passed. That is, to my way of looking at it, a perfectly good disbursement. And then I got a third worksheet that brings them all together. So I think this is I think this is the latest one. Anyway, I think one of the interesting things about this one is the fact that it shows that we have a deficit in our administrative account for the year. And I do admit that Surrogate Lions Club tends to have a very large administrative account. But the reason for that is that I collect almost all the dues for last year, or the year we're in right now. They were almost all paid at the end of the previous year. So right now we're in the process of collecting dues for next year. And when they go into the bank, then the bank balance rises and the deficit falls, if that makes sense. It just depends on, most of the receipts were received in the previous year for the current year. And this happens to be my April 30th treasurer's report that I sent by email to all the members. And honestly, there's not a whole lot of activity. In fact, there's just one disbursement, and that's a monthly thing that happens every month. But ordinarily, when we're in full activity and not self-quarantining, there'd be things like maybe membership dues up there and the raffle, and maybe the tail twister decided to fine everybody. We might have guest meals. We might make white cane collections. And usually we have vision assistance outputs every month for classes and exams. Well, none of that happened in April. So it's really just a blank example to show you how I set things up. Now, there's a second page of this that I didn't screenshot, and it's effectively various different projects that we ran and how much money we made on, how much we spent to make the money. And my membership likes to look at that, but it's got a lot of activity, so I just decided not to screen print it. Questions?
Still all quiet on the Western Front.
Good grief. Hard to believe. How are we doing for time? Okay. We're still okay. All right. Well, now we'll probably get some questions. Sales tax. This slide is talking about clubs getting exemptions from sales tax on things that they buy. And it only applies to level 2 clubs. Level 2 clubs, because they're incorporated in the state of Tennessee and they have a 501c designation, can apply for the state of Tennessee for a sales tax waiver, and they get a form. Single level clubs can't do that. They do not meet the qualifications. And this waiver is only applicable to the activity fund operations. I fielded a call Friday from a line friend of mine who asked me point blank that his club was planning on buying some club paraphernalia or some club shirts or whatever. Could they use the sales tax waiver form? And I had to tell him, unfortunately, you cannot for that activity. It doesn't for that event. And he knew that. He just wanted a little reassurance. Now, the sales tax form, if you read it, the instructions are very explicit. It says that you have to complete the appropriate sales tax form and make a copy of it and file the copy with the vendor. You do not take a blank form, walk up to the vendor and hand it to them. That is not done. You take the copy, the original that you made, and you stick that in your club records, because if that vendor gets audited, they're going to produce that form, and the state auditors are going to be walking right back down to your club to say, are you exempt? And you say, yes, here's my exemption, and here's this, and you show it to them, and you got the original, and everything's cool. Shouldn't be any problem at all. Some vendors, that like the larger box stores who do things at a corporate level, and they sometimes have you file the form at the office or with the corporation, and they provide some method of identifying the purchaser is sales tax exempt. It could be a card or something like that. They just don't do things at the local store. All purchases with the sales tax exemption, key thing, you got to pay them by club check or club credit card. They should not take a personal check. They should not take cash. They should not take a personal credit card. Most places that know the state law won't do that. So John Lyon walks up, he gets the form filed and all like that. He hands them a personal check. They should charge him the sales tax. He's not obeying the state law. Like I said, the sales tax waiver forms remains to the club as documentation. Okay, so let's go to the other. Can a club selling a tangible item as fundraiser, can you become a vendor? I know a lot more about sales tax than I did a week ago because I actually printed down the sales tax regulations and read them. But the short answer is yes, a club can be responsible for collection of sales tax and the remittance of said tax to the state. There are no blanket exceptions for non-performance organizations in the state sales tax regulations. Now, having said that, I'm going to say that it's unlikely that your club could fall into having to collect sales tax and the remittance thereof. And I hope to prove that here in the next couple of slides. First, let's talk about club fundraising for a second. And I divided it into 4 categories, and one of them is really, to me, a subcategory of another one. But basically, there aren't that many ways a club can raise money. I mean, you can get a donation. Well, donations are free gifts. They're not covered under the sales tax law for certain. The club can hold an event and it involves a charge for admittance or participation. The club holds a legal raffle as designated by Tennessee state law. And I consider that really to be club holding an event. But it's a little different in the sense of designated by Tennessee state law. Only clubs, double-level clubs who have a 501c3 designation can file with the state of Tennessee to hold a raffle. And you can only hold one in a year, and it's a really involved process. And I can tell you point blank, if somebody sells you a little raffle ticket and it says donation on it, it is not a donation. It does not meet the legal definition of a donation. So that little rigmarole around it just flat out doesn't work. However, if your club wants to hold a legal raffle, you can go. It's a lot of work to go through. You actually have to get it approved by the state legislature, and it takes about a year to get it approved. It's not, you don't. I'm going to have one. Clubs sell some tangible item to the public. Oh, backing up to legal raffle. For the clubs on this that are Smoky Mountain Lions Charities clubs, Smoky Mountain Lions Charities can hold a raffle, but it can only hold one raffle for all 15 clubs. So it's not like they can hold 15 raffles for the 15 clubs in there. It doesn't work that way. So let's take a little bit of dive into this because it's slightly interesting and it could be critical to at least whatever club is looking at this. Section 67-6-330. It's the amusement tax exemption. It's pretty interesting name for an exemption, but it does cover a lot of stuff that a lot of clubs do. And in section 5A, it says that the sales price of admissions to amusement or recreational activities conducted, produced, or provided by, and in subsection 2 of that, organizations with an IRS determination of exemption pursuant to 26 U.S. Code 501C. If you look at 501C, you'll notice that there are no subsections attached to that at all. That means both level 1 clubs and level 2 clubs can run an amusement. That amusement could be, well, maybe a golf tournament or a car show or a pancake breakfast, anything with an entry price for events. And I point out here that event sponsorships are actually donations. Even though you may give them some tickets for the entry. It's an interesting section. There are also some other things that are specifically listed. I know that in Morristown or Hamlin County, for a long time, they held I think it was a middle school basketball tournament, and athletic events for participants under 18. Hey, that's specifically exempted and stated as a tax exemption. Musical concerts, see Union County, specifically listed as tax exemption. Anybody with a fishing tournament, home run, you're listed. Any entry fee or charge that allows an entrant to participate in a contest or tournament or charity horse show, specifically listed. So I'd say a contest or a tournament could be a golf tournament. That's good. That's really, really nice to have that, because that opens up a whole bunch of stuff you don't have to worry about sales tax on. So let's talk about the sales of tangible items. 76102 subsection 2. And in this, I guess it's pretty obvious that if your club, for whatever reason, sells something year-round, you are probably a business subject to sales tax collection. And I could only come up with 2 clubs off the top of my head that had business operations that I would say did not fall under occasional and isolated sales. I'm not going to mention those clubs. I don't think either one of them's on this call, but they happen to have I don't know, they happen to have very unique things that they were doing. And I think they're very well aware of this section. But an occasional isolated sale takes place by persons not engaged in business or do not regularly sell the type of property being sold. So, by persons, members of Lions clubs are persons. And it means engaged in business. It's really talking about engaged in business of the type of property being sold. So the classic example of that to me is the yard sale. And so your club decides to have a yard sale. Well, and your members go out and they've all got stuff, they put it in the yard sale. And you have the yard sale and you sell the property and you get the money in. Well, unless you're having yard sales every other week or something, you're not engaged in a business and you do not regularly sell the yard sale property. So you're not subject to collection of sales tax. They also define that sales in the business sense is taking place during a temporary period of 30 days or less and occurring no more than twice a year. Now, I got the 30 days or less out of a section called they had what they call a sales and use tax guide book. And it talked about a temporary period of 30 days or less. I actually read section 67-6-102. I could not find any statement of a period of 30 days or less. So I don't know if that's accurate or not. The occurring no more than twice a year is definitely in there. So that means if your club's having a yard sale, you probably only want to have 2 a year. But most clubs only have 1. So is that, my view of it is, yeah, it's possible that somebody could come in violation of this, but I think it's very, very highly unlikely. Most clubs just don't have these kind of operations. I think that you could argue that most clubs' events are pretty much occasional and isolated sales. Even if you do the same thing every year, like sell pecans, it's the people in your club do not, for business purposes or on a regular basis, sell pecans. And Mike asked me about the period of 30 days or less. Well, I mean, who's counting? I think the revenue department's not out there saying you started on June 1st and it's now June 30th and you just sold one on July 1st and you're in violation of the law. they don't do that. So they're pretty much relying on you to identify yourself. And I don't think this is a huge deal, but it is something that needs, it's enough of a thing that it needs to be in the back of your mind. If your club suddenly jumps up and says, we're going to have a concession stand and we're going to run it all summer, then I think you might have an issue personally. That revenue department employee might show up on your doorstep and say, I've been watching you for the last 6 months and you've been running this stand and you've been collecting and paying the sales tax in. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. It is something that does come up in questions from time to time.
Dave, we have a number of questions about, particularly about that stuff.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay, going back, let's see. All right. Can you use the same EIN number for both your admin account and your charities account?
I'm going to give you an opinion about that. And I assume this is a level 1 club?
Well, the gentleman that asked, it's in a level 2, but he didn't say.
Oh, well, he wouldn't have it that way then. He'd had to have gotten a separate EIN to get the corporation.
Okay, the answer is he's asking about a level 1.
Oh, okay, all right. Now, my opinion is that you should, and I will give you the reason why. If you're gonna want to, you need to have your administrative account, and in this case, also your activities account, linked back to the LCI 501c4. And if they both have the same EIN number, it's real easy. And then you just file a 990N on the whole mess once a year. If they have separate EIN numbers, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know, because the one EIN number, the administrative account's tied back to the tax exempt operation of the 501c4, but the other one's not pointed anywhere. And to me, that's a little questionable. Yeah, you might want to get his name, and maybe I need to talk directly to them.
I'll talk to you after the meeting. Okay, next question. Can a credit card be in the company name or must it be in an individual's name?
Credit card for paying for a tax exemption?
I assume it's for a club credit card for some reason.
I would think it'd be in the club's name. Why would it be? If it's in an individual's name, it's an individual's credit card. I guess I don't understand the question.
I'm going to throw in my 2 cents worth. If you go to Sam's with a credit card with your name on it, you're going to have a hard time getting a tax exemption.
Yeah, that's what I say.
My question is, do the institutions issue cards in a club name? And I'm assuming from what you're saying they do.
I've seen it done. My club, well, actually, hold it a second here.
I don't want my name on it. It's what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay. Well.
Okay, well, I'll just ask our bank.
Yeah, I'm sitting here. Other treasurers said, well, Kathy got it in the name of the. All right. I've got it. I said, that's not what you. Yeah. Staples, by the way, gives you a tax exempt customer card.
Right.
So does GS Marketplace. Okay, I don't, yeah, you need to go ask your bank. I don't have any examples of that in my small collection of what treasurers before me have done. I do have a credit card that was issued in a club member's name, Farragut Lions Club. I'm not sure if that would fly, but
I'll ask.
It's got both of them. It's got both the person's name and the Lions Club name on it, and
So they may require some connections to a person, but I'll find out and I'll let you know.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that probably that's a financial institution policy as much as anything else. But,
Right.
Yeah, I would think so. But you understand what I'm saying about the fact that it's the club has to be paying the bill, not a person.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I don't want the liability.
I don't blame you. You get
Okay.
you get that. Put it this way, I'm closing past this stuff fairly fast, but you get in trouble.
Hmm.
Okay, got another question. If a club donates an item belonging to the club to another nonprofit, are they responsible for sales tax? I assume they meaning the other nonprofit, or either one for that matter. Yes.
I would say no, because I would see that as a isolated thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if this guy, if it's the other non-profit's issue,
Yeah.
and if donations are typically not sales taxable, even in-kind donations are typically not sales taxable, in my opinion.
Okay. One more. Can you sell candy bars on a regular basis as a fundraiser?
As a regular basis. Okay. Here's my opinion about that, and you can say this is not a legal opinion, but my opinion is that the Tennessee Department of Revenue sales tax people are not out there monitoring what every single club in the world's doing by any stretch of the imagination. They don't have the personnel to do that. So if one of their employees sees somebody selling a candy bar for X club, they have no way in the world of knowing whether that's an isolated sale, occasional sale, or something they do every day, 365 days a year. They don't know unless they join the club, and then they know. And you know, my opinion about it is that I really, yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Now, I will tell you another true story. This is the only time I've ever heard of anybody involved with the sales tax department, Department of Revenue, getting involved with the Lions. And this happened in Clinton at I think it's the Clinton Days Antique Show or whatever they had. They got a bunch of Clinton. They got if you've ever been there, they got a bunch of antique shops that run down a street in the middle of town, and they have this festival. And the Clinton Lions went out, and I'm sure they don't mind me telling this story because they told it to me. And they sell what they call lion burgers, which are quite good. I recommend them. And so they had their little spot in Clinton, and they were selling their Lions burgers. And a person in the Tennessee Revenue Department walked up to every vendor, or every vendor's a bad term. I don't want to use that term. Every organization selling something as part of that event walked up to them and handed them a brochure on sales tax collection and remittance. Handed to them. They didn't pick out the lines. Inside that bunch of groups, there are probably some people in there who every single weekend go from one event to another event selling the same stuff every weekend.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that I think those people are vendors and should be paying sales tax. The Clinton Lions don't do that. They go, they do that one, or maybe there's two of them a year they do, and then they got a deal with the county fair in Anderson County where they work one of the booths, and then they've come to the our charities raffle thing and sold their burgers at that. To me, they're not a vendor. I mean, they may do it 3 or 4 times a year, and I know the law says twice a year, but they're not a vendor. I don't know how in the world a tax guy could come in and say they're a vendor. I mean, he'd have to be following them around event to event to event to event. What these people were doing was just trying to scare the people who were trying to cheat the system. That's what they were doing. That's the only time I've ever heard of a Lions Club being approached in any way, shape, or form by what I presume was an employee of the Tennessee Revenue Department. And I will say the Clinton Lions were a little bit taken back and asked questions about it, not to him, they asked me, but I don't think they've got an issue. They're not in the business of selling hamburgers, period. I mean, they do it on a very limited scale. I don't know if that helped answer that question, but that's a true story happened here in this district. So maybe I'll go ahead and I'll tell you the two clubs that I think may have to collect sales tax. One of them is Johnson City for the Johnson City Tie Corporation. They go around all over Lions events, and for years they've done the USA Canada Forum, selling shirts and stuff like that. And honestly, it's a little hard for me to see that not as a business. In fact, I would be very surprised, and they've got a lot of smart people in that group, and I'd be very surprised if they don't have some arrangement for paying sales tax on that operation. And the other is the Carnes Pool, not the admission into the pool, but their concession stand. They run that sucker 4 months, or they used to run it 4 months every year, and I guess they're down to 3 months now. And they may not be opening this year, but you see what I'm saying is they're open every day, or 6 days a week. And you start getting a little obvious, if you know what I'm saying. You don't want to get right in their face, in the revenue department's face. But everybody else, the pecan sales are a classic example of that. I don't see them as anything other than occasional and isolated sale, even if you do it every year. I guess this club sells candy all year round, or they have a particular sales period and they don't get them all sold. Is that what they're saying?
It doesn't say, but I think he was satisfied with your answer because he said
Okay.
thanks.
Well, good. Home run for Dave Crawford.
All right. Hey, I don't have any new questions in here. Dave has put his contact information up there on this slide, so leave it up for a while if you want to call him or email him. Likewise, you can email me or call me, and you got the invitation to this meeting from me, so you have my email and my phone number. And we'll try to get offline with you folks and answer them. How about it, Dave? You want to wrap up?
Well, sure. Go out and have a great year. And remember, they're difficult questions, but there's no question that can't be answered, or in no situation that can't be rectified in some way. You just have to identify what the issue is and what you need to do to go attack the situation and get it corrected. And we have people in this district who have pretty much faced everything down except maybe sales tax violation. Hopefully we never see that, but the federal filings, we have people in this district who either have done it or know people who can do it. So there's no reason to be scared of them.
Could I just say something real quick? As your global leadership team coordinator, thank you, Dave. I think it was an excellent session. Thanks, Mike, for putting it all together. And again, your whole district governor team is here to help you. So please feel free to call any of us. And as they said, this is recorded and will be posted on the district website within the next couple of weeks. At least we hope so. So thank you, and you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Huh?